Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's TX141 here with another Ace in the Day gameplay as always for the arcade mode of War Thunder, and today we're bringing out the Typhoon Mk. Historically, the Typhoon was introduced in 1941 and was intended to be the replacement for the already quite infamous Hawker Hurricane. The Hawker Typhoon was going to be based around a Napier-Sabre engine which had produced a lot more power than the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, and as a result meant that the Typhoon in the end could get up to speeds well over 400 miles per hour, or in the metric, over 600 kilometers an hour. Now the intention was that the Typhoon would be used as a mid to high altitude fighter. However, the Napier-Sabre engine proved very unreliable with the fact that it didn't always work, and also it leaked a lot of carbon monoxide into the cockpit. And while that problem could be cured with giving the pilot an oxygen tank and oxygen mask, the unreliability of the Napier-Sabre engine couldn't be fixed via that method, of course. So in the end, the Typhoon wasn't very successful until the arrival of the Focke-Wulf 190. Until its debut as chasing the Focke-Wulf 190, where the Typhoon at the time was the only plane in the service of the Royal Air Force that could go after the Focke-Wulf 190 and catch it down low. When I say Focke-Wulf 190, I'm talking about the A series, of course. As a result, the Hawker Typhoon eventually became known as a low altitude interceptor, which was also deployed at later dates for ground target attacking. The version we're flying, the Typhoon Mk, was armed with 12 7.7mm machine guns, Vickers Machine Guns I believe, and this was just a temporary measure because at the time of introduction there were not enough cannons to go around, i.e. the Hispano-Suiza cannons, or enough firing mechanisms to go around. The Typhoon Mk1B later introduced the 4 20mm Hispano-Suiza cannons. Now in War Thunder, the Typhoon Mk1A is quite a debatable aircraft in my opinion, as you're going to see in this ground strike match on the map Berlin Suburbs. And I must advise this video is very long, so I will try my best to keep it interesting for you. However, I do achieve some interesting results towards the end of the video. Now first I'm showing you the capacity for this plane being a high altitude interceptor by intercepting this enemy Heinkel 111H3. You'll note that despite unloading my entire clip of machine gun ammo into the Heinkel, it's still flying. And due to my quick reload, due to the crew skill being at 292 at the moment, I've gone in for another burst after a quick reload. Eventually this does grant me the kill on the Heinkel 111, but it just goes to show that already the 12 7.7mm machine guns are quite inadequate for the job of interception, despite the plane's role of being an interceptor. So really we're keeping it true to life at the moment. However, saying that, this plane does have quite a few notable and wonderful traits, especially that trait concerning the ability to catch the Focke-Wulf 190 at the time of its conception, at the time of its introduction, and therefore that makes this plane in War Thunder, as you're going to see later in the video, an incredibly fast and hard to catch plane. However, in the meantime, on this ground strike game in Berlin Suburbs, apart from intercepting that Heinkel 111, I've decided to turn around and have a look at this enemy Hurricane, although I notice an enemy P-47 is deciding to come up towards me. And as a result, in a minute I will go into a sharp climb, as you're going to see, and then loop over. Although some disastrous results happened during the course of this loop over, as you're going to see. The setup I'm using is the 30-minute fuel load as always, and 500-metre gun convergence. Because of the interception role, I'm not intending to stay in the dogfight forever, and also I'm using the omni-purpose ammunition for the machine guns. Now as soon as I loop over and open fire on this P-47 Thunderbolt, I notice they're going into a dive, and I'm not having much success, so I decide to get in closer and open up again. Now my burst does hit, and I get a critical hit. How as you're going to see, I take damage from a plane behind me. Upon further note, it was both the Yak-1B and the LA-5 going after that P-47D, and they've eventually killed it, but they did damage to my wing. Now rather than retort in the comments section complaining about team damage or anything along those lines, I decide to stick with it and just see what I can make the most of in the game. And I must be honest, that was rather frustrating because this plane is very fragile. Once it gets severe damage on the wings, you lose all of your limited turning ability. So playing my interceptor role, my dive role, to great effect. I chase after this Heinkel 112 and I get the kill on it before my teammates do. So we've already 2 kills to my name. I'm using all the speed that I've gathered from that pass to chase after this Spitfire, although I do notice that one of my teammates, also in the Typhoon Mk1A, is having quite good success against this Spitfire. And while I move over to get myself into an attacking position, I noticed this enemy Spitfire has taken critical damage, and so I decide to break off and not open fire, because I don't like to kill steal from my teammates. As you go and see, that Spitfire will burst into flames very shortly, and that will give my teammate the kill. And as a result, I decide to loop over and proceed back to the main battlefield. Of course, using all my keeping good spatial awareness to make sure no enemy planes are coming after me. Now, what you'll notice during the course of this game is that the speed of the Typhoon Mk is invaluable to the plane's success in War Thunder, simply because at rank 2 in the British lineup, it's a very fast plane for its rank. P-47s will have trouble catching it, usually, unless the P-47 gets up to a significant altitude, then it will be able to match you in a dive. And speaking of P-47s, I decide to dive after this one, and as you'll notice, by building up my speed, I can catch the P-47 who's just come out of his or her own dive. Of course, it takes a little time because the P-47's doing high speed, although I try to cut them off before they finish their turn. I managed to take out their tail control with my burst, and that puts the P-47 into the ground, making my third kill. Now, I will be honest, I had a couple of games in the Typhoon Mk before this gameplay, and they were incredibly frustrating for the simple reason that every time I went after someone, I'd do enough damage to the plane to cause a critical hit, how I'd never secure the kill. And in my opinion, that's the one main problem with the Typhoon Mk. The 12 7.7mm machine guns are brilliant for damaging components on planes, but they just lack that kick in order to grant you the killing blow, shall we say. Of course, that's why you have the cannons. On a lot of the planes you have a mixture of machine guns and cannons, such as the Spitfire Mark 5B, which was a contemporary of the Typhoon Mark 1, along with other planes such as the Yaks and the German Messerschmitt 109s. However, we have to make the most of what we're given, and I'm still having a severe fuel tank leak, although it doesn't really play into this match, despite the fact that it carries on. And with the altitude I've gained, and one thing to note is the Typhoon has an incredible climb rate, and regains speed very quickly with that Napier-Sabre engine. Fortunately, we don't have all the reliability issues that it historically had, sorry for the stutter, and I roll over and dive on this MiG-3. Although the MiG-3 does become quite aware of me once I open fire, and moves accordingly to avoid my gunfire. And again, as you can see there, if we'd had a cannon or two, we would have been able to nail that MiG-3, but unfortunately, due to our anemic armament, I have to just pass through the formation, take a couple of hits, and get a critical hit on that Junkers 87. I also pass by this PE3 and diving under before they can open up on me on a head-on push. And as you can see, we're using all that speed we got out of the dive to run away from the enemy team, and despite the gunfire coming close from that MiG-3, they're not able to keep up. Which is perhaps why the real saving grace for this plane, in all honesty. The fact that every time you go into an engagement, especially if you just make a small dive from, say, a small 500 to 1000 metre altitude dive, and we just got the kill on the PE3 there, but we didn't really do any damage, so I'm not going to count that in the final score. So we're still on 3 kills, really. As I was saying, the thing with this plane is if you do even a very small dive, you pick up so much speed, especially towards mid to lower altitudes, that you can outrun most planes you go up against. Now, I noticed that the entire enemy team's making its way over, and so I decide to try and dodge out the way, taking small fire from the Yak 3, and I open up on that Junkers 87B2, most likely killing the pilot, and I fly away with my 4th kill. Now, as you're going to see again, I'm being chased by an I-16 Type 18 Ishak, although with the excessive speed and the application of a little bit of WEP, I'm able to break away. The thing with applying WEP to this plane, your water will overheat very quickly in the Typhoon Mk, and I think that might have been modelled in just to avoid abusing the WEP, and also just to perhaps provide a small unreliability to the engine. Because as you can see, the temperature's up to 128 degrees Celsius, and as a result, in order to try and remove the overheating on the water, I just avoid using the WEP for the time being. And I also use a different technique which I'll move on to later. I looped over there and I go back into the fight looking for the closest target, and I notice the Yak 3 is probably the best target, seeing as the other 2 enemy planes have crashed into the ground. So opening fire once again at convergence. Again achieving a critical hit and setting the Yak 3 on fire, I decide to leave the engagement in case my teammates hit me, and just let that Yak 3 eventually hit the ground, because I know I've got the kill or an assist at the very minimum. And there we go, that's kill number 5. I'm just going to have a glass of water while I fly away. An additional bit of advice I would give you all folks, an additional bit of advice I would give folks, every time you break away from an engagement and get a quiet period, always reload your machine guns, because while you do get, I think, just over 3,000 rounds of 7.7mm ammunition in this plane, you are going to need every round you can get in order to put an enemy plane down. You saw earlier with that Heinkel 111, although I did approach a distance from behind, and that might have led to why I couldn't nail the Heinkel in one burst. And you'll have noticed with the fighters I've been going up against here, they're not superbly armoured planes such as that Yak 3, but at the same time we've had to put in a significant amount of our ammunition to guarantee a crit. Now, to be honest, the whole idea of the 12 7.7mm machine guns does date back to the RAF's idea that rather than go for the cannon, and this is from my own personal knowledge, I might be wrong, but rather than go for cannons, really having the 12 7.7mm machine guns or the 8 7.7mm machine guns on the early Hurricane and the early Spitfires, i.e. the Spitfire Mark 1 and Mark 2A, it was sufficient. And talking about sufficient, I dive on this I-15 biplane, securing a critical hit, but again, not the kill. Instead of going after the I-15, I break after this LA-5 for a quick burst. Just doing some damage. Unfortunately, I have to break out because my teammates are looping up, and also I'm wondering where the enemy planes are behind me. And I get another assist on the I-15 this time. Again, I've got the LA-5 giving pursuit, although he or she quickly gets hit by my teammates, so I'm alright. And as you can see, we're once again applying the speed that this plane has down at low altitude to break away from any given engagement, and the fact that this plane accelerates extremely fast. Now, once again, as I loop over, I notice there's an enemy Fury biplane, Hawker Fury, right in the middle of all my teammates, and I'm thinking, well, surely 5, 6, 7 of my teammates can kill this Fury, but alas, it seems as though they all are missing, and so I decide to just pop in and get the kill. I only make it a quick burst simply because I've noticed that nobody's actually done any critical damage to the Fury, and also I don't want to get hit by my teammates because they're all trying to go after the one plane. Now, to be fair, on our 6th kill, I wouldn't say that was a kill steal for the simple reason I didn't see any critical damage in the corner, and additionally my teammates seem to be having quite a problem with that Fury. And now, as the game goes on, you'll see that my team's almost lost all its, ground units. I'm pretty much begging for this game to end, in all honesty. I'm trying to sort of get my energy back, cool my water down, and the alternative method of cooling the water down that I find is just turn your engine throttle back to 80%, and that way it helps the water cool down a little bit. If you run the engine at 100% constantly, sorry to interrupt, we've got a Messerschmitt 109E3 coming over, and they miss with their first burst, although their machine gun fire clips the tail, and so I just go into a dive to use my speed and the performance of my engine to get away. As you notice, I engage WEP fully, and I would say that the Messerschmitt 109s engage in their overdrive, the 113% function or 110% function, to keep up, because I managed to pull the gap to 0.6 kilometers, but I'm not quite away. As you can see, we're both matched for speed, although I don't want to hold down WEP forever because I know my water's going to overheat in the end. So I'm thinking to myself, well, what do I do? If I fly straight, I'm going to get ripped to pieces when he or she eventually gets their cannons back. And really, the only other choice I have is to make a really sharp turn and hopefully cut into their line of fire. You see the cannon shells are now coming over. So I make a very sharp cut here. I engage the landing flaps, and I just avoid the second set of cannon shells. I get hit by one of them, I think. And now it becomes a case of me trying to survive for as long as possible until my teammate in the Yak 1B and all my other teammates who are coming over manage to take out the Messerschmitt 109. Again, they've got a close shot on me, but just because I'm keeping the angles nice and tight, the 109 cannot get a perfect burst. Levelling out at this point, I noticed that the ML3s had to dive under me because my teammate, and I get a quick burst in. And then as I go to turn over and get the killing shot on the ML3, they bail out. Now, it's most likely because the Yak 1 did enough damage to cause the ML3 pilot to bail out, and I'm grateful for the assistance. However, because I'm so panicky at this point concerning the state of my plane and trying to make it to the end of the battle, I completely forget to say thank you in the text section. And if the Yak 1B pilot was watching, I'd like to say thank you very much for the assistance you gave me during that. And now I'm just looking at the scoreboard as well, just seeing how well we're doing and also what enemy planes are left. And I'm noticing there's just a couple of sort of mid-range Yaks, i.e. Yak 7s, Yak 1s, and some early MLs, i.e. the ML1, Messerschmitt 109 ML1 flying about. So I'm just staying over here, reloading my machine guns and keeping my water down by turning the engine down, as you can see in the top left corner. I've got to admit this was one of the tensest games I've played, however I've been trying to get a decent gameplay of the Typhoon Mk for you guys, and it's been driving me absolutely insane for the simple reason that I do enjoy this plane, however I do not enjoy the Anemic armament. In no way am I condemning the Typhoon Mk but what I'm saying is what you're going to find when you fly it, from my experience, is that you're going to have a lot of moments where you wish you'd got the kill, but instead you'll get an assist and a couple of crits on an enemy plane, because you're following the RAS philosophy of 12.7 machine guns will be enough to hit a vital part of the plane. You're going to hit something, which is true. We've hit a lot of criticals in this game, however we just haven't been able to turn all those criticals into decent kills. Well, not decent kills, kills in general. And again, now I'm building up my speed because I lost a lot of it in that dogfight, getting some altitude because I do like to engage from about 1,500 metres and then dive when I'm in the low altitude battles. Although really I prefer to fly this plane up as high as possible, as you saw at the start, but most of the enemy targets were not there because there was only one bomber, i.e. that Heinkel 111. And now really I'm just playing my cards, waiting, noticing that my teammates are moving into positions to attack. They're forming up a nice daisy chain with the enemy planes. And as well as waiting for the game to end, I also decide to have take a couple of pot shots at these enemy planes, as you're going to see shortly. I'd like to say thank you as well, folks, to all the support I've been given again this month, i.e. January. It's been really great. We're nearing that 100 subscribers, and I've got a couple of ideas of things I'm going to do for 100 subscribers. However, I'm not going to let them go until I actually hit that number. So diving down, I make a quick pass at this Heinkel 112. Noticing that I'm coming way too fast and way too steep an angle in order to get an effective firing solution. And so I fly out for a bit, just let my speed drain off, and then I loop over, noticing that the enemy planes are not chasing me. Now that's the main tactic. You have to make the most of the speed of the Typhoon to get the 7.7mm machine guns into an effective firing solution position. As you can see, I dive in on that Heinkel 112, get a critical hit, however it's just not enough, so I loop over, thinking that they'll be engrossed in trying to take on my teammates, and I get once again just shy of a decent firing solution, and I get him right behind this Heinkel. Now I'm completely missing because of my convergence, although I get in a couple of nice hits, and now I fire at the other Heinkel 112. I get the assist on that one, and the other Heinkel 112, as you're about to see, crashes into the ground and grants me my final kill. In 3, 2, 1, there we go. So that's my 7th kill, plus the one on the PE3, which doesn't really count. So that's the end of the game, folks. It was quite a tense one in all honesty, and it's time for a bit of scores. Sorry, time to look at the scoreboard. So personally, you can see that we managed to get 8, well we'll call it 7 kills. We've got 6 assists as well, showing that while we have an ineffective armament compared to what we could have and what we desire, i.e. some cannons, 20mm cannons would be nice, we can still rack up the points and the damage. With 21,000 silver lions and 13,000 research points, or 1,300 research points, or 1,500 research points for the future plane I'm researching, we've done very well. Additionally, when we look at the player statistics, as we will shortly, we'll notice that we were the top of our team with that very nice kill count, and we did manage to achieve our ace in the day as always. So really, in conclusion, I would say that the Typhoon Mk is not the greatest of planes at rank 2 in the British lineup. It can move far, it can fly fast, and it can be absolutely deadly in a good pass. However, that armament's always going to leave you lacking, whereas other planes for your rank do have those cannons which will make the difference. But anyway, I've been TX141. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, why not subscribe, like, or leave a comment in the section below. Otherwise, take care and have fun in the skies, ladies and gentlemen.